All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Some people may be continuing to join us, but we will go ahead with our webinar. I just want to first welcome everybody back to our Survive and Thrive webinar series. This is our first one since, I believe, 2020. And so we are thrilled to be bringing this program back. And we are grateful for Dr. Zuniga and Penny DeCou being here today, leading our discussion on discovering hope. Before I hand it over to them, I just wanted to reintroduce our foundation if you haven't been with us in a while. The Texas Oncology Foundation is dedicated to providing support to cancer patients in the communities where they live, work, and receive treatment. So we're very specific to our communities, and we like to give y'all that personal in-community support. And through our Survive and Thrive programming, our foundation is able to provide educational events and provide resources to both help build community connections and support all involved in the cancer experience. A few of those programs are our webinar series that you are participating in today. We also have about a month-long virtual experiences that we've been hosting, and we are going to do our 5th session starting February 24th through March 17th. And so I will add that link into the chat if you are interested in finding out more and registering with us. For caregivers, we have also been hosting support groups, Caregiver Connections, with which Penny DeCou is a part of. So just a few of the ways that we are in communities, even virtually. If you haven't been using Zoom, I did just want to remind you of a few things. Just so you know, in a webinar Zoom, you can hear and see us, but we are not hearing or seeing you, so you don't have to worry about muting or unmuting anything. If you are having technical difficulties, like your video or you're not seeing their screens, typically it's best just to exit and rejoin the webinar session. You can always get back in with that link. And if you're experiencing audio issues, you can always call in rather than using your computer audio, and you can select that down there on the tab at the bottom where it says mute. You can hit that up link and it'll give you different options for audio. If you have questions, we encourage you, throw them in the chat. Both Dr. Zuniga and Penny are going to be looking at that, as am I. And if we don't get to it during the conversation, please know that we are holding those questions towards the end and we will definitely address them. Lastly, I just wanted to remind you this webinar is being recorded and the online archive will be available after this live session. I'm going to make sure to share it with you in a follow-up email. It'll be located on our website under the Programs tab, and you'll see Survive and Thrive webinar archives. All right, like I said and mentioned, we are so thankful to have Dr. Zuniga and Penny DeCou here with us. They have both been longtime partners with our foundation, involved in multiple of our programming, and have graciously continued to walk alongside us in this virtual world. And so we are just thankful for their relationships with our foundation. Dr. Zuniga is a licensed psychologist in the Austin area. And Penny DeCou is a licensed clinical social worker at Texas Oncology and has recently transitioned to an oncology mental health counselor position for our Texas Oncology group. So like I said, we are thankful for you guys to be here and kick off our webinar series again. So I'm going to give it over to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. Well, Dr. Zuniga recently encouraged me to call him David, which feels super weird to me, but I'm going to go with that.
Absolutely. And attendees too, feel free to call me David. Okay, I've been called worse. It's okay.
No, okay. All right. So I definitely just want to go in there again and welcome Dr. Zuniga, or David. As Kelly was saying, he has a background as a licensed psychologist, but I want you to hear kind of what his expertise is. He works with mindfulness, spiritually integrative counseling, grief, loss, wellness. If you go to his website, there is so much more. He is also an ordained Zen priest, and he's worked extensively as an interfaith chaplain and administrator in both pediatric and adult oncology. I've had the good fortune of knowing David for many, many years now, and he's just a pillar of the oncology support community, and I'm really excited about having this conversation with him today. we're going to be talking about what does hope look like in 2022? How can we discover hope or rediscover it whilst living with what I think the biggest theme is uncertainty. So what does hope look like in 2022 while living with uncertainty? So I'm going to start off with little kind of me last year. Somewhere over the summer, I began to, I got myself all vaccinated, and there was sort of this feeling that, maybe the pandemic was coming to a little bit of sort of going into home base there. And there was kind of like a few heady days where I even, dare I say it, ditched the mask, walked into Target, and I had that great experience where, I was going to go in for that one thing. And of course, I came out with 10, but those days were really short-lived, as glorious as they may have been. And, and along came Delta and Omicron and everything else. And look where we are now. I was telling David before we started, over at the Texas Oncology centers, we're back to having to go to like the highest levels of caution, where caregivers cannot come in with patients unless there's extenuating. I mean, it's just, Groundhog Day all over again in a not so great way. So as we're entering 2022, those of you on this call today, you are being faced not only with the uncertainties that come with a cancer diagnosis, that's a pretty full plate right there, but you're also coming in with still living in COVID limbo. And, like I was saying, many of us had hopes last year that COVID, there was going to be a way we could just kind of wait it out and then get back to restarting our lives after. And that could be a very long wait if we decide to do that. If we just kind of keep putting our lives on pause until after, because we really don't know what after is or when or where. And with this uncertainty, I myself, the people I know, the community, there can be a loss of hope. So starting on that, David, can you talk maybe a little bit about what does a loss of hope look like?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Penny. I'll share something kind of personal. And I'm just, by the way, I do want to say I'm delighted to be here. Just a quick check-in. I love the Texas Oncology Foundation. If you haven't had a chance to check out their programming, please do. Their stuff is also online. It's just amazing. And Penny and all the social workers at Texas Oncology, I learn a lot from them. So I'm just really glad to be here. And thanks to everyone, the attendees who are most important. Thank you for being here. And I just want to, I appreciate your really good question, Penny. It's so heartfelt, all the things you're sharing, Penny. And, I'll share a personal thing too. I remember when I was a little boy, and my mom has Alzheimer's now, but my mom would always say, tomorrow is another day. And she just ingrained that in me. Tomorrow is another day. And so, sometimes I'm like everybody else. I get down sometimes, but I always, and I say this to my kids now, I'm like, tomorrow is another day. I always say that to my kids, and I think that when we start to lose hope, we no longer feel that way. We no longer feel as much optimism, and tomorrow doesn't seem like a new day. It seems like the same old day. And I've heard many people, I don't know if some of the attendees or you've heard this, Penny, but I've heard some people say, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that kind of thing. Since the pandemic started, that people use the phrase Blur's Day because,
I haven't heard that one.
yeah, Blur's Day. So, human beings, whether we're introverted or extroverted, we're communal creatures. That's how we evolved and survived to this day. We're meant to be together, at least in some form, and there's some powerful research that even seeing a picture of someone you care about can activate stress-reducing neurotransmitters neurologically. So we're meant to be together. And so it is hard when something like the pandemic comes along and Yeah, it can, because we're not together in the same ways. We're trying to stay physically safe, which is a good thing. But there are just disruptions to our day-to-day routine, our communal rituals as a society. And it can definitely make us sad, make us anxious, make us fearful. And, just a quick note too, one of the best ways to change our thoughts or to change our behaviors is to change our environment. Like, how can we make our environment more nurturing, less stressful, more supportive of what we're trying to do? And one of the challenges we're facing right now, Penny, as you bring up, is there is a pandemic, and especially for cancer patients and cancer caregivers, that creates an additional set of challenges from the general public. And so we do want to be very careful, because when there's these stressful things in our society, it can impact our behaviors, which I think is some of what you're seeing in current events these days. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so we do want to be aware and tend to our mental health. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Always, and especially right now.
So as we're facing these challenges and an infinite number of painful problems in our lives, whether that be related to our cancer or our personal lives. I wanted to talk a little bit about, how what are the ways we can cope with any given problem. And there is a psychologist I'm fond of, Marcia Linehan, Dr. Marcia Linehan,
Yeah.
and she says there are basically 4 ways that you can solve a problem. There is one, you can solve it. 2, you can change how you feel about it. 3, you can accept it. 4, you can make it worse. So if I point out that uncertainty is really the problem that a lot of us are living with, uncertainty about what we can plan for, about, are we going to be able to have that surgery, or are they going to consider it to be an elective surgery and it's going to get postponed, all these different things that are going on. What role do you think that acceptance, in the way that she's talking about it, can help us deal with that problem, the problem of uncertainty?
Oh, well, Penny, such a good question. And by the way, for those of you who haven't heard of Marcia Linehan, she's phenomenal. Quick personal note on Marcia Linehan. She actually, so I'm into spiritually integrative counseling, and so is Marcia Linehan. Yeah, some folks may not know. Marcia Linehan, she shares this. So she has, like us all, she has had challenges in her life too. And she drew from the wellspring of her own personal experience. And I believe she's Christian, and she kind of has an interest in Buddhism and Asian philosophies. And she said that she integrated some of her spiritual interests, her interfaith spiritual interests, into her research and tested it out and came up with, as Penny points out, a great form of counseling called dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT. It's so good. And it does a lot of meditation and good stuff. So she's great. And she does talk about acceptance in a very realistic and helpful, and I think hopeful way.
Mhm.
I think when we talk about acceptance, like with Marcia Linehan or other psychologists, there's pop culture notions of acceptance, and then there's what I think is psychologically healthy and realistic notions of acceptance. And that is to say, I think sometimes in pop culture, media, that kind of thing, we talk about acceptance like it's a 22-minute sitcom. Like it's everything is, all, no matter how crazy and complicated the problems are, everything is resolved in 22 minutes, with kind of like unicorns and I'm being a little flippant, but we kind of
Unicorns
have
are always helpful.
yeah, everybody likes unicorns, but we make acceptance, we put people on pedestals, and we act as if acceptance is just, where you're kind of pristine and unsullied and have no challenges whatsoever in human existence. And I can definitely say, as both a minister and a psychologist, that's not true, and that's actually not helpful. Because we put these unrealistic and frankly less hopeful examples of what acceptance is. If you read biographies or autobiographies of famous, like Marcia Linehan is a perfect example. Marcia Linehan is brilliant. She's probably one of the top 100 psychologists of the last couple decades. She's wildly successful and deservedly so. Like, she changed the field. There was a 2011 article in the New York Times about Marcia Linehan, and she has, in her past, she struggled profoundly with depression and anxiety and other challenges. And one of the reasons I think Marcia Linehan is so inspirational is she, again, dug deep into the wellspring of her own existence and difficulty, and then transformed her suffering by coming out with this amazingly research-supported, innovative form of therapy. And Marcia Linehan is kind of a model for what acceptance is all about. If you read biographies or autobiographies of Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, artists like Maya Angelou or Louis Armstrong or the Dalai Lama, great physicians or psychologists like Marcia Linehan, sometimes the people who are most in the world, because they're doing the hard work of trying to make the world a better place, sometimes they have a profound amount of difficulty. Sometimes they get sad or anxious or afraid or numb. We're all human beings. But what they do again and again is they bring themselves back to what matters most, living in a value-based, purposeful way of living. So when we think of acceptance, acceptance is not some kind of hunky-dory, roses and buttercups thing. Acceptance means we're willing to commit to something that matters. And if you look back on your life, just a couple examples, getting married, having children, enduring cancer, getting a, graduate degree, or, writing a novel or running a marathon, whatever it is, the things that tend to matter most to us in life, the kind of demarcators of our existence, which matter the most, those things weren't always easy. And they weren't necessarily always fun, but they were very, very meaningful. And so what acceptance is intentionally trying to live in the world in a value-based, purposeful way, and bringing yourself back to your meaningful, purpose-based path again and again and again. That's what acceptance is. So you could actually think of acceptance as also being synonymous with gumption, with strength, with courage, with endurance, willing to do, like Penny, if you don't mind. I have to say the social work department at Texas Oncology is excellent. I don't mean to be too personal, Penny, but I would imagine sometimes being a social worker is challenging, working in oncology during a pandemic, and yet you do it voluntarily throughout the pandemic. We commit to things that matter. That's what acceptance is.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say is that we can still, that hope that comes with living a life that is coming from our values and what's important to us, we can still have that hope even when everything around us is so uncertain.
Yeah.
If you're building it upon that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just really liking what you're saying and resonating with it. Well, and I do want to say, yeah, I agree 110%, Penny. And I also, one thing too is we want to ground ourselves in the data. And one challenge is that when our environment is stressful, that can amplify the stress on us. We all have conditioned thought patterns, all of us. And that could be from genetics, our culture, growing up, the things we read in society, the things we experience, but we all have conditioned emotional responses, and when our environment is stressful, it's kind of like if there's flu season or a pandemic, we're more likely to get sick, so we have to be careful. If there's stress, and that's biological healthcare, if there's stress in our environment, we're more likely to feel depressed or to feel anxious or to feel anger or feel numbness, that kind of thing. So we want to pay attention to our environment to be aware of what's going on. I also want to say there are good things happening in the world. And let's not forget that. Real quick, some of you may know this, but I'll give you a quick thing that gives me optimism. For those of you who haven't heard, there's an epidemiologist in Houston named Peter Hotez. I don't know if you know, I'd almost like to ask the audience or whatever if they've heard of him, but it's okay if you haven't. I think his name is spelled Hotez. I kid you not when I say this. You may even want to like brace yourselves for this kind of good news. So Peter Hotez works in infection diseases in the medical center, I think Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. He came up with a free original vaccine and he waived the patent on it. I was actually talking with a friend of mine over the weekend who works for another pharmaceutical company that I won't name, who, you know, made one of the vaccines. It's very good. And my buddy was like, he waived the patent? And I was like, yeah, he waived the patent. And I kind of laughed and I go, you know, he could have been a billionaire. And my buddy who works in, you know, for a pharmaceutical company got real serious and he goes, no, he would have been a billionaire. So, you know,
Wow.
so I kid you, Google it. Like if you need a little dose of hope or optimism, NPR and other media outlets have run stories in the last week or two. And this matters exactly for what we're talking about, kind of the potential sadness of the pandemic. Peter Hotez came up with a vaccine. He waived the patent. He's distributing it for free to any country that wants it. It's supposed to be an excellent one. And it's also a simpler technology. I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm a psychologist, but it's supposed to be a simpler technology that's been around for decades, that's easy to manufacture and distribute. And he's giving it away for free. And India, which I believe makes the most vaccines in the world, has already given an emergency use authorization, and he's giving it all over the world for free, you know, and he's giving up a lot of money to do that, you know. And so I mean, to my mind, that's what a hero looks like. And I just share that as one example of, are there stressful things in the world? Yes. Are there hard, concerning things? Absolutely. We always want to try and face reality as directly as possible. And there's amazing things happening. So one skillful way to kind of focus on rediscovering hope during these uncertain times is, let's make sure we see the full tapestry of data. Is there concerning things? Yes, there is. Are there amazing things happening too? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And one skillful step is to, as much as we can, surround ourselves with people who can bring us back to our path, help us cultivate acceptance, and ground ourselves in the data. There's amazing things happening right now. Peter Hotez is just one example.
Okay, I'll be doing some Googling.
Yeah, please do.
Little good news too. Just circling back to this whole like acceptance in terms of uncertainty and all that.
Yeah.
I also came across another psychological term that I have a hunch you'll be able to talk on: psychological flexibility.
Oh, sure.
That kind of seems to be something that could be very useful to a lot of us right now. Can you elaborate a little more? Because I'm only just dabbling.
Yeah, so I actually, you know, Penny and I were kind of working on this workshop beforehand. You know, Kelly, Penny, and I, and Penny and Kelly did a lot of amazing work. You know, there is a definition of psychological flexibility, and this kind of comes from a school of counseling called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is basically, for those of you who are psychology nerds like me, acceptance and commitment therapy is a variation of what we call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy is very good. You know, it focuses on looking at your thoughts, looking at your behaviors, what can we measure, and then, you know, how can we help people live in the world the way they want to be in the world. Acceptance and commitment therapy does the same thing. I honestly feel like acceptance and commitment therapy is almost kind of like, it's definitely rooted in spirituality with a ton of research backing it up, but it's very skillful. And so in acceptance and commitment therapy, I'm going to read this definition and then I'm going to elaborate on it. Psychological flexibility is, quote, making contact with the present moment fully as a conscious human being, and based on what the situation affords, changing or persisting in behavior in the service of chosen values. And so I can elaborate on that too, but I'll repeat that and then elaborate a little bit. Psychological flexibility means contacting the present moment fully as a conscious human being, and based on what the situation affords, changing or persisting in behavior in the service of chosen values. So we're in the present moment, psychological flexibility, and that is helpful. If we're worrying, if we're ruminating or perseverating, if we're thinking about the past, well, that can lead to depression. Like this pandemic, it is factually true. The pandemic has been going on for about 2 years now. But when we think about things in an excessive way in the past, that can lend us towards feeling depressed, feeling sad. If we're looking in the future, when will this ever end? Will I need, it's easy to amp ourselves up if we project too far in the future and make us anxious. Where can we actually get some wiggle room? Right here in the present moment. Right here in the present moment, we can do things for ourselves to cultivate hope. So, psychological flexibility means contacting the present moment fully as a conscious human being. So, one skillful way to work on developing hope is trying to face reality as directly as we can. It's also okay to check out. One of my ways to check out is I watch some late night comedians and probably eat too much ice cream. But, but as much as possible, we also want to be in the present moment and fully conscious, fully awake, because sometimes things aren't as bad as we think they are. Sometimes they really are bad, but we bring the full tools of our consciousness, our mind, our thoughts and emotions, so that we can deal with the problem at hand, kind of like the Marcia Linehan quote. So what is psychological flexibility? We're in the present moment, we're trying to face reality, and then we either change or persist in behavior towards our chosen values. So that kind of brings us back. We work on being psychologically flexible, meaning we persist in some behaviors. We might need to change other behaviors. But again, it's always in service, like you were asking Penny a second ago about acceptance. Acceptance means committing ourselves to a value-based path, a purposeful path. And psychological flexibility works with that because we monitor our thoughts, monitor our behaviors, and adjust accordingly. Psychological flexibility means we persist in some behaviors, and we might adapt other behaviors. Like if I can kind of share an example you shared, Penny, when we were chatting before we logged in. Penny was sharing that she started doing some telehealth. She probably hasn't always done telehealth, I would imagine, but I would imagine, I don't want to speak for Kelly, but I would imagine Penny, knowing her well, as a social worker, she probably really values helping people and finding resources to help people. Then the pandemic comes along. So she has to be psychological flexible. Penny, on the one hand, will persist in the behavior of providing social work, but then she changes some behavior and shifts to telehealth. So because, her patients might have compromised immune systems and she's trying to keep them safe. So Penny, you're an example of that. You persist in some behaviors, you adapt other behaviors towards your chosen values and purpose. That's what psychological flexibility is. And if you'll forgive an old interfaith chaplain, now psychologist. So, we talk about, this is psychology language, changing or persisting in behavior in the service of chosen values. Or if you don't mind me saying, it's sort of like the acceptance prayer, having the, enduring certain things, having the strength to change other things, and the wisdom to know the difference.
So for those of you not familiar, that's the Serenity Prayer?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I meant to say that. Yeah. The Serenity Prayer.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, and I'm just doing this just for fun.
Sure.
Another thing about telehealth, you get to have these.
Whoa. That's love. I have to ask real quick, Penny, what's your dog's name?
This is Jackie.
Aw, so sweet.
She's part Yorkie and part poodle and 100% a hot mess. So.
That's lovely. Thank you, Penny.
So that was a reward of some psychological flexibility in going to remote. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, but just, like that's a perfect example, Penny. Self-care matters. There's a reason why adoption of pets is going up these days. Animals are healing, joy is healing, and we all need a sense of touch. Yeah.
That's it. I don't know why we were talking. I felt like I wanted to pick her up.
Absolutely.
So self-care, you brought that up. It's been a very popular kind of go-to phrase that we hear a lot of. Again, in uncertain times, I feel that there's some mindfulness-based practices that are self-care oriented, such as gratitude journaling, that kind of thing. I think some of those practices can help. I think when you said before, notice the good.
Yeah.
As hope engendering.
Absolutely. It's such a good question, Penny. One way to think of our brain is, you've got approximately 80 billion cells in your brain. And the cells, kind of a simplification, but the cells communicate via neurotransmitters. So let's say we're all meditating. Well, we'll probably, or doing yoga, or petting a lovely dog, we're hanging out with our dog or something. Your body is very calm. The brain and the body are one. Your brain is a part of your body. And when, you're petting your dog or you're meditating or doing yoga or something, your body is probably like, wow, we're really calm today, and you produce serotonin. Or you're really anxious, we're doing some doom scrolling on social media or something, which is easy to get sucked into, speaking from personal experience, and we also want to be careful of what we put in our brains. But we can get, they say, and there's a saying in neurology, neurons that fire together wire together. And just like an athlete gets muscle memory, we can get neurological memory, and we can get the same thoughts conditioned into us pretty quickly if we're not careful. And again, we want to be careful during the pandemic because we don't have our safety checks, our friends, around us in the same way as often to kind of keep us sane. So, the things you're bringing up, Penny, in addition to there being research behind their value, I think what you're suggesting, Penny, makes a ton of sense. I myself do, in fact, I think, Kelly, didn't y'all put on a gratitude program just a few weeks ago, or through the Texas Oncology Foundation? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
It sounds like something they would do, for sure.
Right, exactly. Well, and I say that because gratitude, one, check out the Texas Oncology Foundation. They have tons of good stuff archived. Two, yes, gratitude. One thing I do, I pull up my phone, and I try to do this once a day, and you can set your timer. Doesn't have to be a long time, can be 30 seconds, 1 or 2 minutes, can go all the way up to 5 minutes, but you just set it. There's a lot of ways to do this. This is just one of my personal favorites. I set a timer, and for 5 minutes, I just talk about stuff that I'm grateful for. And if it's hard, if you're feeling really sad, feeling really down, maybe you set the timer for shorter, 30 seconds or a minute, and it'll even be like, if I feel really sad or down, sometimes I'll get real concrete. So far, to our knowledge, I'll be like, my wife has not had cancer. My daughter Erin has not had cancer. My daughter Rory has not had cancer. I'm grateful that I'm able to work remotely and stay safe. Not everybody is. I'm grateful that Peter Hotez came up with a free vaccine that he's giving to the world. I am very grateful for that.
You're floating on that one.
Yeah, I definitely am. But and you just kind of named things you're grateful for, and what you're literally doing, just like an athlete gets muscle memory throwing footballs or shooting basketballs, you're conditioning neurological memory towards gratitude. You're training your brain. I can't emphasize this enough. Neurons that fire together wire together. So you're compassionately rewiring your brain for how you want to be in the world. Just like you get a vaccine to teach your immune system to protect it from COVID, you're training your brain, protecting it against sadness. You can write in a journal. Something I do that's also kind of lovely, sometimes with my wife, we'll sit down on the, and if my wife, I usually set my gratitude timer for 5 minutes. So if my wife comes in, then we set it for 10, well, we do 5 minutes her, 5 minutes for me, but we, and we'll just doing gratitude exercises with like your partner or your kids. Very, very rewarding. But yeah, any kind of forced journaling, out loud dialoguing in your head, but condition yourself. Just take 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go on a 3-week, yoga retreat to Nepal. That's lovely if there wasn't a pandemic and, you have that kind of time off or whatever, but you can do little bits of things throughout the day, and just tiny little bits of things woven into the fabric of your day will change the experience of your day. Absolutely.
Now, David, this may just like be too much good news for you at once. But, Sharon Lockhart put in our chat, Jonas Salk also did not patent the polio vaccine. Well, I guess that's historical there, but he changed the course of history. So just, yeah, that's something to be grateful for right there, right?
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Sharon. Absolutely. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about. There are good people throughout history who've done good things. There are people out there working hard to do good. Let's not lose sight of that.
Absolutely. So in light of all this, why is it important for us to continue to set goals and intentions at this time?
Yeah.
We've been talking a little bit about value-based goals and how might they differ from regular goals, just that kind of topic there.
Absolutely. Goals are great. The one way to differentiate between goals and values, or values and purpose, is our values are kind of why we're in the world, so they're kind of the reason why we're here. They're what matter most to us in human existence. And that is an important thing to think about when we're working on rediscovering hope. So we're kind of talking about purpose and as a way to understand goals. We're in the pandemic. The Omicron variant, we do have hard data on places like South Africa, the UK, Israel, these other patient populations that we can look at. Another point of optimism. And believe me, I am not minimizing the pandemic. My wife is immune compromised. We take the pandemic super seriously. And just grounding yourself in the data. In other countries, it does seem that the numbers come down fairly quickly. And it does seem like that's happening in some states right now, like New England, So the one thing is, we think about our values, our purpose, and that's how you want to be in the world. Like, I'm just calling on my friends here. Kelly works for the Texas Oncology Foundation. I would imagine Kelly really cares about helping cancer patients and cancer caregivers. That's a value that she has. And our values are the way we are in the world. Like Kelly and Penny and I could go for a hike and we could say, let's hike west. Well, cool. We live on a round planet. We can hike forever, a value is not about a goal. It's not about a destination. It's the why of human existence. It's the why you're here. But Penny, you bring up a great point. You're talking about, what do goals look like? Now, goals are kind of signposts along the way. Goals can operate in different ways. But one way is, goals are like signposts along the way, letting us know that we're living in a value-based way. So, if you don't mind me using an example, Penny, maybe undergrad, you studied social work and you got a bachelor's degree in social work. Well, that's a powerful goal. You can like check that off your list. Then you go get a master's degree in social work. Wow, you can check that off your list.
Then you get a much more winding road, but I'll let you go with it. Yeah.
Right. Well, and exactly. Thank you, Penny. It was a winding road because I would imagine, knowing Penny, Penny's a very kind person, and I'm betting Penny values helping other people. So that's her value, speaking for you, Penny, hope that's okay. And then she would establish goals along the way, like, I'll get my bachelor's degree. I'll get my master's in social work. I'll learn how to do telehealth. Those are goals that you can measure your progress along the way of making sure that you're living in a way that's congruent with your values. So, and also goals do give us something. They're like a good coach. They keep us on the path, and goals are a very nice way to focus, a concrete, practical way to focus on rediscovering hope. You know, you can set these goals. Like, I'm super bad at technology, but when the pandemic started, I set a goal to get good at it. You know, and you know, aligning with myself with my value of trying to use psychology and spirituality to help people. You know, and we want to think about goals. You know, it's okay too to have smaller, fun goals. We need a balance. You know, we can't always be studying medicine and psychology and all that. You know, sometimes we just need to sit on the couch and have a little ice cream and watch some Stephen Colbert or something like that, some Ted Lasso. You know, so yeah, so we need a balance of goals for both things that grow and help challenge us, you know, so we're not staying stagnant, you know, with the brain, use it or lose it. We're staying active. And then we also need pleasurable goals, fun ones, you know.
I think that's a good reminder.
Yeah, and we need that balance. We need both. And doing pleasurable activities creates the fertile environmental soil for rediscovering hope. Having, you know, kind of growth-based goals also is a way to get hope, because you're looking towards the future and working towards something matters. You need fun self-care goals and then growth, productive, value-based self-care. And even fun is value-based. You're taking care of yourself. You're being kind to yourself.
And if some of that fun outside the pandemic may used to be, my loved one and I are going to take a trip here at the end of chemo, or we're going to do X, Y, Z. Maybe that's where some of that flexibility needs to come in, because you can put that, the ultimate goal is quality time.
Yes.
Being curious about somewhere or something together.
Yeah.
Just, you can put, yeah.
Yeah, you want to be a great point, Penny. That's such a great point. You want to adapt your goals. See, and your pets are wise and agree. They want to be adaptive. But you know, like, you know, so one thing we want to do. This is just one tiny example, but I remember when the pandemic started. There's this. You know, so the pandemic was kind of dawning on our nation's consciousness in mid-March of 2020. And right when that first started, if you were like me, I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a scary time. And it was right around St. Patrick's Day. So there's this famous Irish band called the Dropkick Murphys, and they're kind of a punk rock Irish band. I'm not really into punk rock, but you know, there was this famous Irish band, and they did a free concert online. Just them in a studio, and they put it out all over the world. So, you know, this was right when the pandemic started, but my wife and I had some Irish beer, and we kind of decorated our house on the inside. And was it as fun as like going to a live concert on St. Patrick's Day? Maybe not. But was it meaningful? Yes, it was. Was it a different kind of fun? Yes, it was. And honestly, in some ways, it was probably better, because it's all about the process. It's all about trying to live in the world, again, coming back to that acceptance piece, to do the best we can with what we're given. And in a way, that's even better, because it's brave and it's working hard. And so that kind of creativity, you know, we can get there, my friends. We can do it. Absolutely.
Well, I'm not sure where we are on time. Kelly, are you there?
We might want to open up.
Also, I've decided that I don't need Alexa anymore, or anything. I can just say, David,
Yeah.
XYZ, and like you've got the computer in there.
Well, this is where being a nerd is advantageous.
Oh, man.
But I think one of the things was we did want to. I think we were going to open it up to the group. And so no pressure, but if any of the participants on the call, you know, patients, caregivers, if you have questions or things you'd like to share,
or yeah, your own input on any of this, because we're all working it out together.
Yeah. And so, you know, clinicians like Penny and I, we learn from our clients, you know, so feel free to just kind of share. And I just wanted to point out too, one of the attendees, Miss Sharon Lockhart, she pointed out, I think maybe you mentioned this earlier, Penny, that Jonas Salk also did not patent the polio vaccine, making it available to all and changing the course of history. Yeah, You know, and I'm not an epidemiologist. I bet Jonas Salk did have to work really hard to do that, you know, and look how, you know, it may not have always been fun to, you know, being a researcher during the era of polio, but he worked hard to make the world a better place. You know, he endured to make the world a better place. I mean, that's just beautiful. And there's good people out there. Yeah, and just to highlight too, I think Kelly had shared in the chat that the Texas Oncology had done a gratitude workshop. And full disclosure, I think that was me. But anyways, so hopefully you're grateful for that resource. And then the Texas Oncology Foundation puts out a lot of valuable stuff on mindfulness too. So you know, I apologize, Penny, you had asked about mindfulness earlier. Mindfulness is one of many types of meditation. You'll hear that term a lot, mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. It's kind of buzzy. Mindfulness is one kind of meditation among many. There's a lot of great forms of meditation. The best form of meditation is the one that works for you in the moment. Sometimes you need a wrench, sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver. They're all valuable. It's just kind of like in sports, maybe you're a baseball player or you're a football player or basketball player or something, you know, and you use different muscle groups for different athletic goals. Meditation is just training different parts of your brain, training your thoughts and emotions to help you be in the world the way you want to be in the world. Meditation is a completely normal, natural, healthy thing. You know, you're just training your brain. Whenever you put your thoughts and emotions on things that are helpful to you and how you want to be in the world, that's a form of meditation, you know? So, you know, one of the great things about meditation is it's super, super portable. You can do it anywhere, you know? Just really tune in to the smile of a friend, or the laughter of your child's voice, or the fun, as Penny just showed a second ago, of petting your dog, you know, or enjoying a cup of tea. It's just sinking deeply into the experience of your life at the moment. That's what meditation is. Oh, Penny, I think you're muted. Oh, I think you're still muted, Penny. Sorry. I think I tried to unmute you. There we go.
I remuted.
Sorry.
Animal issues. We started our conversation, you know, I was talking about with the pandemic, lots of us are saying, well, you know, it's like life's on pause and then we'll restart everything after. And what we're kind of coming to now is completely flipped over.
Yeah, such a good point, Penny. I'm really glad you said that. I'll give an analogy. You know, so for those of you who have kids, I have kids. One of the things they say is when you have kids, the research is really clear. One of the most important things for being a good parent, an effective parent, is self-care. You love your kids so much. You love your kids more than yourself. Your kids are, you know, the most important thing in your life. And you do have to take care of yourself. People will be like, oh, we'll do this after the kids are off to college or after the kids are out of the house. No. Do some things now too. You take care of yourself, you'll be a better parent or a better caregiver to your spouse who has cancer, or social worker, or psychologist, you know, whoever you are, you know. And so with the pandemic too, yes, there are probably some things we cannot do right now and that get delayed. But can we be creative? Can we be flexible? Let's find some things that we can do now to sustain us and keep our hope going for when Peter Hotez gets this vaccine all over the world, you know, and when we, you know, when it gets safer, because this too shall pass. We will make it through this, my friends.
And I want to put a plug out there for those of you on the webinar now. If you are in that space where the hope is gone, you know, your tools are just not quite there for you to be able to kind of, what's that phrase, lift yourself up by your bootstraps. Right. Please feel comfortable in reaching out for support. These are tough times.
Yeah.
You know, there's absolutely no shame in that. What I will actually also point out is that here in Austin, it is so hard to get in with a mental health therapist. Everyone is needing, support. Would you say that's so, Dr.?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that is very, very true. It is hard to get in. Clinicians are full right now. It is hard. So one thing to consider is, first, Penny, you make so many good points. I appreciate everything you said. One thing is, it is hard to get counseling support right now. So let's talk about that too. But the first thing is, I can't emphasize enough, everybody needs help sometimes. Everybody needs support. Again, we were talking about kind of like people like Marcia Linehan and, Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa, these kind of seminal figures. If you study their lives, they all had support. It's a sign of strength and a sign of insight to reach out for support. In no way, shape, or form is that like a weakness or a deficit, or you're not tough enough. We may want to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but somebody needs to make those boots and those socks, and someone needs to, yeah, someone needs to teach us how to tie our shoes and all that kind of stuff. We all need help. We all need support, no matter who we are. It is, and if you feel really down, really stressed, one, it's normal to feel stressed in times like these. The second thing is, maybe consider reaching out to a mental health professional. Maybe you might be on a waiting list for a little while. Hopefully you can get in. There's also hotlines for people who are in crisis. Absolutely. And maybe if you can't get into a therapist right away, there are other research-based forms of self-care that can be game changers. Exercise, for example. My personal hypothesis, and again, I'm biased because I'm a psychologist, not a physician, but I think as good as exercise is for us physically, it's even better psychologically. That's my personal view. So exercise, meditation, art, literature, film, these things are all healing. Getting a pet. Quick joke about pets. I think Kelly's going to jump in a minute, but there's an old joke in mindfulness circles that if you're always patient, if you're always kind, if you're always present, if you're always forgiving and radically in the moment, you're either a Zen master or a dog. We all need support, and there's other good things too that you can do that are very affordable and that are accessible and research based. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, all of these kind of things. Yeah.
And if you're at all a patient or the caregiver of a patient at Texas Oncology, please let your doctor know, let a social worker know, and they will get you hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Use those social workers at Texas Oncology. They're great. That's right. And the Texas Oncology Foundation, definitely utilize their services. They have a treasure trove of stuff archived. Definitely check that out, y'all.
So David and I can talk for hours, Kelly, but I have a feeling it's time to
I can talk.
No, I love it. It is always such a blessing, and you are both such a wealth of knowledge and insight and resources, and so we are grateful to have you talk, and we love it. So no, thank you guys for both being here, and just thank you to all of our attendees for joining us live. We appreciate your participation with us. If you have any questions and you didn't have them at this moment and you get them later, please feel free to email. I'll put my email address in the follow-up to you guys, but we're happy to reach back out to these two and get your questions answered. So if those come up, please feel free to reach out. And kind of piggybacking off of how you guys ended, I too am a believer that community is huge and so important, and you need that type of even peer-to-peer support. And with that said, again, I'm going to plug our virtual experience. If you are just looking for a community of others who just understand and get it, you don't have to explain to them what you're experiencing in this cancer experience. That's the community for you. And so I do encourage you. We will have Monday presentations. We have a variety of workshops, some of them mindfulness and yoga and nutrition's involved. And so we have a lot of shorter workshops that are more interactive. And then we actually have support groups built into that. And so you will get to meet with Texas Oncology social workers in small groups to talk about that. And so I will definitely include the registration link in the follow-up for all of you. But yeah, we just encourage you, stay active with us, stay engaged. You can find us on Facebook. I added in the chat those links to all of our resources and webinars. So please feel free to stay connected with us. All right, well, thank you both again for being here with us. And we just appreciate everyone joining and bringing back this webinar series with us. We're thrilled. And we'll be back in February, so be on the lookout for that, for those details. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Be well, friends.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye-bye.